Hey everyone, for today's video I figured I would sit down and chat to you about my labour and delivery story. So many of you have been asking what happened because on our birth vlog we were filming the whole thing and then things kind of took like a different turn and we weren't able to film very much, and so many of you have asked what happened. So I figured I would just sit down, chat through everything that went on to the best of my memory because I have forgotten a lot of it. I would say the last 6 hours are a very big blur, so at some point I'm going to get David to come in and sit down and explain what happened from like a certain time because I physically don't remember anything. I do want to mention before we start that if you're pregnant, I do not recommend watching this video. It's not a positive birth story, and I don't think it'll be beneficial for you to watch. I watched a few labour and delivery stories before giving birth and it freaked me out more than anything, and I just wouldn't recommend watching this video. So if you're subscribed and you've clicked this video, then thank you for coming over and watching, but it's time for you to leave. I think everything started on Friday the 19th of January. I had a feeling that my waters had like a slow leak, but I wasn't completely sure. It was my first pregnancy. I didn't really know what was going to happen or what anything was going to feel like, but I did think I had a slow leak. So we went to the hospital and we were there for about 5 hours. They did a bunch of checks and it turned out that they said my waters hadn't broke and that I should just go home and wait it out. And at that point I was so fed up. I was about 8 days overdue. I was done with being pregnant and I just really wanted her out, so I was praying that it was my waters breaking. We just accepted that she wasn't coming and we would just have to wait until our induction, which was a week later. But then on Saturday at about 8 p.m. I started getting like cramps and just feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I had heard people say that early contractions feel like cramps, but because I'd had them so much previously I didn't really think anything of it. But then by about 10 p.m. I noticed that they were a bit more constant and I could feel them start and stop, so I was like, okay, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm going to time them. So I used this app on my phone and I started timing them, and they were about 6 minutes apart for about 30 seconds each, I think. Some of them lasted a minute, but they were quite random, so I was like, I don't know if this is it or not. And I felt like a bit daft for timing them because I didn't know. I think by 11 p.m. I went to the toilet and there was like pinky water on the pad that I was wearing. So I was like, something is going on. But again, I wasn't really sure. So after that happened, I called the hospital and I told them that I was getting cramps and they were around 5 minutes and that I just had this like ready stuff in my pants. And they said, okay, pop another pad in and keep an eye on it and call us back if your contractions or your cramps get around 3 to 4 minutes apart for a minute each. So I was like, okay, well, I cannot sleep. I'm too excited. / they were kind of painful. They weren't super painful by this point. They were just like a bit uncomfortable. I knew when they were coming. So David went to sleep and then I just stayed up and just kept timing them. Then by about 3 a.m. they started coming like every 3 minutes and lasting a minute. The reason I knew it was happening was because my whole body was just shaking, like I couldn't stop shaking. My jaw was chattering, my hands were just literally, I was a shaking mess. And I woke David up and he was like, whoa, you are shaking so much. So I called the hospital again and they said to come in. And at this point, I was convinced we would get to the hospital and they would say, go home because it's not labour. So I kept thinking in my head, no, this isn't it, this isn't it. And by 4 o'clock in the morning, I was getting checked. I was linked up to a machine thing to check the baby's heartbeat and she was all good. And then things took a little bit of a turn and got very painful. Because the midwife could see on the machine that my contractions were like 3 minutes apart, she was like, okay, we're gonna do an internal examination and check how dilated you are and just see what's going on down there. And I was like, okay, sure. I knew it wasn't going to be comfy, but I did not know how uncomfortable it was going to be. And I had a lot of tears. I basically bawled my eyes out, and I think I shouted. The reason it was so painful, and this is TMI and gross, and I literally am scarred for life, is that she couldn't find my cervix. She said it was way too far up and she physically couldn't reach it. And her whole fist, and David said up to here of her arm, went up my hoo-ha, and I felt it. It was so horrific that like it's making me clammy just thinking about it, but I just wanted to like crawl up the bed, and she had to use so much force, and oh my goodness, it was horrible. Once she had found it and she was just in there, she was like, I'm gonna have to pull it forward, and I was like, what do you mean? And I was in so much pain. I was shouting and crying and squeezing David's hand, and then she had to pull my cervix forward, and it was... So that was the start of the hospital experience. At that point she knew that I was 4 centimetres dilated, which I was really, really excited about. It meant that we didn't have to go home. But she did say that she needed us to just like walk around the hospital so that the baby's head would push lower down and hopefully push my cervix forward, because she said it was just so high up and she needed the baby's head to just like drop down a little bit more. So we walked around the hospital from about 4 a.m. until about 7 a.m. And then at 7 I was like, this is too much, like I am tired, the bump is heavy, the contractions were strong by this point, and I was just tired of walking around. So we went back in and we said, like, please can we just come in now, can you find us a room? The thing about the hospital that I went to is they have this really cool birthing unit called the what's it called? The Mulberry unit, or the Mulberry suite or something. If you saw in the vlogs, then the room that we eventually went into was like a hotel room, and it was amazing. To be able to have your baby in the Mulberry unit, you can't have an epidural and you can only have pethidine and gas and air. So they said that there wasn't a bed free in there at the moment, but they could put me into like a ward until there was one free. So at about 8:30 on Sunday morning we went into like a ward, and by this point my contractions were really strong, really painful. Each one brought me to like tears. I didn't cry, but had tears in my eyes because they were so intense. And at that point I asked for pethidine because it was just getting very painful. At 9 o'clock they gave me pethidine, and from that point on my memory is a little bit dodgy. It comes back a little bit later on, but for like 3 hours I think I slept, but every single time I closed my eyes I had a vision, and it was a really weird vision. I only remember 2 of them, but I remember at the time being like, what the heck? One of them was that David was eating the dinosaur from Toy Story, just munching on it, and it was really weird. And then I opened my eyes and told David that he was eating a dinosaur, and then I closed my eyes again and I was watching David put his feet through the armholes in his Parker jacket, and I was just watching him walk around with his Parker jacket with his legs through the armhole, and it was just so weird. It was so weird. Also, I should mention, when we got checked in the morning and we found out that I was 4 centimetres dilated, we made a bet of when the baby would be born, and I was convinced she would be born at 2 p.m. on Sunday, because I was like, I'm already 4 centimetres, this is going to go quick, this is going to be easy. And then we got checked into the Mulberry unit at 1 p.m. and I was like, this is not happening, it's not happening in an hour. So I definitely got my bets wrong, very wrong. She wasn't even born on that day. Once we were in the Mulberry unit, we were in there for a little while. My pethidine had worn off and the contractions came back with a vengeance. They were so strong, and I remember by about 4 p.m. I asked for another thing of pethidine. After I had the pethidine I was pretty happy for a while. If you saw the birth vlog, I was just eating an apple, I was bouncing on my pregnancy ball, I was happy as Larry, and I wanted to try every drug under the sun, which is hilarious because I don't drink and I've never taken a drug and I've never smoked and I'm super teetotal. I think I got checked to see if I was any more dilated at about 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or something like that. And then they told me that I was 5 centimetres dilated. So in 12 hours, I had dilated 1 centimetre and I was mortified. It was so sad and I just couldn't believe that I'd only gone up 1 centimetre. I felt like I'd been awake for an eternity and I really thought that they were going to say, oh, you're at an 8, cool, we're good to go. But they didn't and it was so sad. I couldn't see an end in sight. I just remember being so annoyed. So then I just laid on the bed in a bit of a grump and just puffed on my gas and air. Then it got to about 8 p.m. and nothing was happening. My waters still hadn't broken. When they checked me, they said my waters were bulging, which I don't really know what that means, but they said that they needed to pop them, and hopefully once they popped them, it would speed things up a little bit. So I was like, just pop them. Just pop them, I'm ready. So they popped them, and then from that moment on, I was like a water feature. There was just so much water. Every like 2 seconds they had to just keep on changing the sheet, I think then after that I got checked again at about 10 p.m. and when I got checked at 10, I don't remember, but David says he thinks I was at 8 centimetres at 10 p.m. I'm not completely sure if I was, but I don't remember, so I'm just going to go with his word that I was 8 centimetres at 10 p.m. This is when things started to just become a blur. I really don't remember anything, and it's so weird. I don't know if it was because I was having so much gas and air, or if my brain has made me forget it because it was just quite rubbish. But I don't remember a thing from this point onwards. I remember, actually that's a lie, I remember like little segments that like pop into my brain here and there, but I really have like a massive blank. So I'm gonna go get David and then he can explain what happened from this point onwards. I just told him that my waters got broken and I wasn't sure when I started pushing after that.
Right, so after the waters were broken, you were at a point where you had so much gas and air that, and this is funny looking, actually it was funny at the time, it was the one thing that was funny at the time, that you were in so much pain and then...
Sounds funny.
And then you just fall asleep. So you'd be like, ah! Oh, ah! And then we'd have to keep waking you up to do more. So it was at a point then that you kind of become delirious, but you were in so much pain. At a certain time, they did another test on you, and she could feel the head. So she was like, right, okay, let's have this baby. Mm-hmm. So then you started pushing in the proper sense. For any men watching this video, getting ready for labour, you start out thinking that you're kind of just going to stay around the head area, kind of help your wife or fiance or whatever, and kind of keep everything very...
You didn't want to look at my bits,
no,
basically.
And I didn't ever want to cut the cord, and I just was like, right, I'll be there for support, but I'm not sure if I'll get, I don't want to see anything gory. Yeah. By this time that Ebony was pushing, Ebony was on all fours, I was right behind her, just staring, just praying that baby would come out. Any kind of reservations you have, they're gone. At the beginning, Ebony had this little tiny...
A little robe, a little towel over my hoo-ha, and I kept on thinking, oh, I hope Katie doesn't see who's David's sister. And by the end of it, I was butt naked.
Yeah, soaking bed from your waters breaking, me at the back. But that's all part of it. So at that point, we were waiting for... We thought that the baby was going to be coming out, and that went on for 2 hours. And I remember, or the actual, any minute now the baby's going to come, that lasted for 2 hours. Because I remember about an hour and a half into it, the midwife went and spoke to the doctor, just because there was obviously going to, they weren't happy with something.
Yeah. I remember at about 11:50 p.m. on Sunday, I looked up at the clock above the bed, and I remember thinking, if I have this baby in 10 minutes, it's going to have the same birthday as my dad. And I just was really pushing so hard. So I remember pushing at 11:50, and then it turned midnight and became Monday, and I was like, this baby is never coming out of me.
Me and my sister had kind of realised it wasn't going to happen. Like, Ebony had pushed as hard as she could. She was in so much pain, and we just weren't getting there. And then when that last half an hour went, the midwife went to the doctors, and at that point everything changed. Ebony went into a wheelchair, and then they took her to the labour ward, and then...
Can I just say, sitting down when you've got a baby's head in between your legs is the most excruciating thing ever. And I remember I couldn't have gas and air going from the room to room, so I was just like screaming. I was screaming so loud.
Yeah.
And I remember I kept on apologising for screaming even though I was having a baby.
Yeah, at that point you were very loud and you were in so much pain. It was just, and nothing was stopping it. And then during that trip, we think that the baby pooed.
Yeah.
So then when the doctor saw you, they're even more worried because they're like, we need to get this out now.
Yeah.
And before they had even decided everything, Ebony was almost getting ready for theatre. They were like putting something in her arm, and I remember really vividly that when they put something in her arm, there was a bit of blood that spilled out, and it just stayed on the floor. And I was thinking that wouldn't normally happen, but they're obviously they really need to get her into theatre. So the doctor came in, and basically they decided that they were going to try forceps, but they thought it was going to be a C-section. I think that's what it was. Something about a forceps trial and a C-section. Yeah. And they started reading Ebony all these kind of consent forms.
And conditions. I was having a contraction, and the person was just reading me through terms and conditions, and I was just like, let me sign it. I had to tell him to stop because I was having a contraction. And then when the contraction went, I was like, cool, okay. And then I signed it, and then after that they just wheeled us in.
Yeah, so quickly we were in there. I sat at the side. There was 8 or 9 people there. All of them were amazing. And then Ebony was getting an injection in her back.
Mm-hmm. There was like a lady there who must have been like our mum's age, and I actually thought she was an angel from heaven. Like she was so nice and so calming and relaxing. I don't know how anyone calmed me when I was having a contraction, but she was just holding my hand and telling me to look in her eyes, and I just honestly thought she was an angel. And then the injection went in my back. It wasn't an epidural, I think they said it was a spinal block. And then once that went into my back, it was literally the best thing ever. I couldn't feel a thing. I finally felt like I could breathe for more than like 3 minutes at a time, and it was so good after that point.
And what happened was that the Daisy had turned on her side, so her head was turned to the side, and I think they came to the realisation that actually it didn't matter how much Ebony had pushed, it wasn't going to come out that way. But the doctor was amazing, and although he had to cut Ebony and a few other things, Daisy eventually came out about half an hour later, and it was so cute because and she must have literally just popped just her head out at this point. She just made this little cooing noise.
Yeah.
And that was when my first tear eruption came. It was the cutest
noise ever. Oh. It was just a little like whimper. It was so cute.
But it was just, that was like a release of like 24 hours. It was the best sound to hear, because at that point obviously you're so worried. It was the most amazing sound.
It had been a full 24 hours. We got admitted at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning, and she was born 5 a.m. on Monday morning. So we were in there for a very, very long time.
Which is crazy when you think about it, because actually you hear people's labours that are so much longer than that.
So much longer, yeah. I don't know how anyone does it.
We heard the little noise, and then Daisy came out and got thrown in your stomach, on your chest.
I was
with
a
so
blur.
Much blood.
Yeah, I don't really... I remember that part happening, but I don't... It sounds horrible to say, but I don't think I was having like emotions at that point. So I think I was just staring at you.
Yeah, you didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And there was so much blood, and it all came on your face, and
yeah.
I cut the cord.
You had to cry.
I had to cry. I'd been waiting 24 hours to have a cry. For us, it was incredibly traumatic, and I'm sure people have a lot worse and a lot better. My sister has had 3 babies, and she said that ours was worse than she'd ever had. So not everyone was going to have it like ours.
No.
But the positives is, firstly, the way
we got a baby out of it.
You got this little baby, and the way you feel about it changes over a few days. And
now it's kind of humorous.
Yeah.
At the time, it was the worst thing in the entire world. We said we would never do it again. But now, it's like, it was 24 hours, but it feels like nothing now.
Yeah.
Because we've got a baby.
And I think it changes you. It changed me. It changes you because to be with your partner for that long with that amount of pain, to have the baby, to meet the people you do, it was just such a intense experience that you come out. I don't know, you come out so different.
Different, yeah. Well, we came out parents.
Yeah.
Pretty different.
You've got to be responsible with this one.
Yeah. But that's pretty much everything that went down. Everyone was asking if I had a C-section, and I think we were ready for a C-section, but I didn't have a C-section in the end. It was forceps, and then we were in the hospital for a few days after that. But then since then, everything's been pretty good. So that is the labour and delivery story.
And if you're having a baby soon, it's totally worth it. And you won't even remember the 24 hours excruciating pain.
Literally, I don't remember it. It's kind of great. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, remember to hit thumbs up and subscribe. We will be posting some more vlogs very soon. But this one is keeping us quite occupied. But we're trying our best. And yeah, we'll speak to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.